They never taught you this in Sunday school. Before Adam, before Eve, before the garden even existed, something else was here. Something powerful enough to rule a world. Something corrupt enough to destroy it. And God didn't just judge it, He erased it. Wiped it so completely that most people read right past the evidence every single time they opened the Bible. 2 verses. That's all that's left. 2 verses that hint at a catastrophe so massive it may have ended an entire world before ours even began. This is that story. And once you see it, you will never read Genesis the same way again. God creates a perfect universe. Perfect light. Perfect order. Perfect beauty. And then, 1 sentence later, everything is dark. Empty. Destroyed. No explanation. No transition. Just ruins. Genesis chapter 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Genesis chapter 1:2. And the earth was without form and void. Darkness was upon the face of the deep. That's it. That's the jump. From perfect creation to a dead, dark, waterlogged wasteland. No disaster mentioned. No war. No judgment. Just chaos. So theologians ask the question that nobody wanted to ask out loud. What happened between verse 1 and verse 2? Because something did. And the answer might be the most terrifying story never told. This idea has a name. It's called the gap theory. And it suggests there's a vast, unwritten period of time hidden between those 2 verses. A world that existed before ours. A world that met a catastrophic end. The earth in verse 2, the formless, void, darkness-covered planet, isn't a new planet waiting to be shaped. It's a ruined planet, floating in the dark, after a cosmic judgment. Now I have to be honest with you. This is a speculative theory. It's not accepted by mainstream biblical scholarship. Most theologians see Genesis as one continuous creation story. But for those who believe it, the clues are hidden in plain sight, starting with the language itself. And when you look at the original Hebrew, things get very dark, very fast. The case starts with 2 Hebrew words from Genesis 1:2, Tohu va Bohu. Most Bibles translate this as without form and void. But supporters of the gap theory say that translation softens the meaning a lot. The word Tohu appears in Isaiah 45:18, where it says, God did not create the earth in vain. Same word. This suggests Tohu isn't just unformed. It means a state of ruin, emptiness, waste. But the real bombshell is Jeremiah 4:23. In a terrifying vision of divine judgment, the prophet looks upon the land and says, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, Tohu va Bohu, and the heavens, they had no light. Here, Tohu va Bohu describes the aftermath of God's judgment. The land isn't unformed. It's devastated. For gap theory supporters, this is everything. If Tohu va Bohu means a wasteland of judgment in Jeremiah, then maybe it means the same thing in Genesis. The earth wasn't created as a formless mess. It became one. And here's where it gets even more interesting. The Hebrew word translated as was, hayeta, can also be translated as became. We see this exact word in Genesis 19:26, where Lot's wife looks back at Sodom and became a pillar of salt. So could Genesis 1:2 actually read, and the earth became without form and void. Most Hebrew scholars say no. In this grammatical context, was is correct. But the question alone is enough to make you wonder. And if we follow this path, the real question becomes, what caused the catastrophe? The answer involves the most powerful being God ever created, and a war that may have shattered an entire world. To explain this primordial ruin, the theory turns to another story. One you've probably heard, but maybe never fully understood. The fall of Lucifer. In this speculative timeline, the original creation of Genesis 1:1 was perfect. A pristine, pre-Adamic earth. And God placed his most magnificent creation to oversee it, the archangel Lucifer, the light-bearer, a being of unimaginable beauty and power. Then came the rebellion. Described in Isaiah 14 and Ezekiel 28, Lucifer, full of pride, sought God's throne. "I will ascend into heaven," he declared. "I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will be like the Most High." What followed wasn't a quiet fall from grace. It was a cosmic war that shook the heavens. And when Lucifer was cast down, the judgment that followed was so absolute, it shattered the original world. Think about what that actually means. The ground you walk on might be a graveyard, a ruin of something ancient and forgotten. Every mountain, every ocean, built on top of a world God had to erase. He wasn't just an angel who made a mistake. He was the most magnificent being ever created. And pride, just pure, unchecked pride, brought down an entire world. Sound familiar? Some have even called this cataclysm Lucifer's flood. A watery destruction that predates Noah's by an untold age, leaving the world a ruined, empty shell. And it's into this framework that some try to place one of science's greatest mysteries, the dinosaurs. Where do dinosaurs fit in the Bible? It's a question a lot of people quietly wonder about. The fossil record shows they ruled the earth for millions of years. They died out about 66 million years ago, long before any human timeline. The gap theory offers a solution. It suggests dinosaurs were part of that original pre-Adamic creation. They lived and died in that first world, their bones buried in the catastrophe of Lucifer's fall. But not everyone agrees. Young Earth creationists believe dinosaurs were created on day 6, right alongside humans, and they point to the book of Job as their evidence. In Job chapter 40, God challenges Job by describing a creature of terrifying power. "Behold now, behemoth, which I made with thee. He moveth his tail like a cedar, a tail like a cedar tree." Not a rope, not a branch, a cedar tree. What animal has a tail comparable to a massive cedar? A giant sauropod dinosaur, like a brachiosaurus. And God says he made it with thee, meaning alongside Job, meaning alongside humans. The debate still rages on, but the idea of prehistoric monsters in the biblical world doesn't stop with dinosaurs. It gets far more personal, and a lot more terrifying, because the next monsters weren't beasts. They were half human. If you're finding this journey fascinating, if these questions are sparking something in you, hit that subscribe button right now. We go deeper into mysteries like this every single week. And trust me, where this story goes next, you don't want to miss it. Long after the supposed pre-Adamic world, and just before Noah's great flood, the Bible describes another monstrous invasion. This time, the monsters weren't beasts. They were a hybrid race that corrupted humanity from the inside out. Genesis chapter 6. There were giants in the earth in those days. The sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown. These beings are called the Nephilim. The name comes from the Hebrew root naphal, meaning to fall. They are called the fallen ones. One ancient interpretation, popular in Jewish tradition, is that these were rebellious angels who left heaven to take human wives. Their children, the Nephilim, were an unnatural race of superhuman giants. Their very existence was an abomination that corrupted God's created order. Another view, the sons of God were the righteous line of Seth. The daughters of men were the ungodly line of Cain. In this reading, the sin was spiritual compromise, not supernatural union. These weren't monsters from a movie. According to the text, they walked among humans, ate with them, bred with them. The corruption wasn't coming from outside humanity. It was becoming humanity. The Bible places the Nephilim story immediately before God decides to flood the world. And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The timing is not a coincidence. Their arrival was deeply connected to the corruption that forced God's hand, a monstrous symptom of a world spiraling into chaos, forcing God to hit reset again. The flood was supposed to be the end of it. Genesis chapter 7 is crystal clear. Every living thing on the face of the earth was wiped out. Only Noah was left, and those with him in the ark. That should have been the end of the Nephilim. And yet, it wasn't. Hundreds of years later, Israelite spies scout the land of Canaan. They return terrified. Numbers 13-33. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants. And we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. The Hebrew word they use for giants, Nephilim. How? How did they survive the flood? Theory 1. It happened again. A second unrecorded wave of fallen angels. Theory 2. The Nephilim DNA was carried through the flood, hidden in the bloodline of one of Noah's sons' wives. The corrupted bloodline theory. The code for giants survived the reset, only to re-emerge generations later. The most famous of these post-flood giants is Goliath, described in 1 Samuel 17 as a champion warrior of incredible size, wearing bronze-scale armor, bred for war. Some who study these theories notice that the Hebrew word for bronze, nehoshet, sounds a lot like the word for serpent, nehesh. A symbolic link, they claim, back to the ancient enemy in the garden. The text itself doesn't state this directly, but when you've come this far in the story, the symbolism hits differently. So here's what we're left with. The biblical narrative, when you look at it through this lens, isn't just one single story of creation. It's a story punctuated by at least two great resets. The first is a silent catastrophe, a cosmic war that ruins the first earth, leaves it a formless, watery grave. The 6 days of creation, in this view, aren't creation from nothing. They're reconstruction from ruins. God takes a planet shattered by evil and methodically restores it, separates light from dark, raises land from water, culminating in a new steward for a new world, Adam. The second reset is loud, famous, and terrifying, the Great Flood. This time, The world isn't ruined by a celestial war. It's corrupted from within, a monstrous union that pollutes mankind, spreading violence and wickedness until creation itself groans. The flood is God's sorrowful act of purification, a baptism of the entire world, preserving one righteous family to, once again, start over. In both scenarios, the theme is identical. A world so overrun by a monstrous element, whether a fallen angel's pride or a giant's corruption, that it deviates from God's perfect plan. 2 resets, 2 destroyed worlds. And both times, the cause wasn't some outside force. It was something that started perfect and chose darkness. Maybe that's the real warning buried in these verses. So, was there a prehistoric monster that made God start over? Maybe the monster was never a single creature. Maybe it was a state of being, the monster of chaos, of rebellion, of corruption. The gap theory is still highly speculative. The linguistic evidence is rejected by most scholars, and mainstream theology sees Genesis as one continuous story. But the questions don't go away, because the Bible itself gives them to us. A world that became formless and void, angels who sinned, giants who walked the earth, a flood that destroyed a world lost to wickedness. Whether you see these accounts as literal history, powerful metaphors, or echoes of forgotten truths, they force us to look at our world with awe and mystery. The Bible may not just be the story of one beginning. It may be a story of several new beginnings, of a God who constantly battles chaos to bring forth order, light, and life. So tell me, are these just disconnected stories of strange creatures and ancient judgments? Or does the Bible contain a hidden history of forgotten worlds and divine resets? Drop your theories in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'll see you in the next video.